So, here we are. After being promised next-gen gameplay footage in many recent events that ultimately failed to materialize, we may probably have seen some gameplay footage that might be representative of what Xbox Series X and PS5 could be capable of. This all happened during Wednesday's Summer Games Fest showcase, which I'm now lovingly referring to as the Keighley Revealies. Environmental realism was the theme of the day, so it and realism in general are a consistent through line in everything we're talking about today. There are a number of interesting takeaways from the reveal of Unreal Engine 5, so let's dive right in. Today's first thought is about probably the most exciting facet of UE5, the Lumen engine. Everyone has highlighted the great atmospheric possibilities this offers, but I'm way more excited for the potential gameplay implementation of Lumen, in particular environmental exploration that relies on manipulation of light for hiding or drawing players' attention to concealed areas and secrets, sort of in the style of Uncharted 4's open world areas. Lumen seems to have great potential for emphasizing more organic and unique forms of discovery, which rewards more sophisticated observation and awareness. This in turn can give each collectible or secret more value in and of itself. Traditionally, a game's systems and environments were not realistic enough to utilize real human observation skills, so secrets and collectibles are usually jammed in corners of linear levels, or developers would tend to recycle a finite amount of overt environmental hints to signal to players that a collectible was nearby. So as a result, unless the player is trying to find every collectible, or the thing you find is of value in the game, like a high-level weapon or item, these small-scale discoveries were not rewarding in themselves. One of the things I think Lumen can really do is alter how we visually interact with environments and reward the process of discovery rather than the result. My second thought is about the other major system mentioned, Nanite. The presentation really emphasized how this new environment tech eased the burden on artists and developers, especially when it came to importing extremely high-fidelity environmental assets into a game. There's really no bad way to spin this. When any process is streamlined like this, it can only mean less work for developers, which potentially reduces crunch or allows them to focus more on other aspects of the game. Apart from this though, I'm a little conflicted about just how much of an effect it can have outside this. I'm all for increased visual fidelity when it can be tied to gameplay in some way, but I think we're bombarded by AAA publishers using the term immersion to such an extent we've begun to conflate visual realism with immersion in general. There are different recognized categories of immersion in games, and visual immersion is just one of them. To my mind, the most truly immersive moments in my recent memory were the photo-finding quests in Breath of the Wild that actually allowed me to think organically about how to locate the areas in these photos. This was a result of the navigational systems in the game that allowed me to interact with an admittedly less visually realistic world, but to do so in a realistic way. In other words, it's not self-evident that a world that seems realistic in certain ways necessarily behaves in realistic ways as well. And so because games are interactive, I would always consider rules and behaviors that can be anticipated and predicted naturally to be far superior. In fact, it may be the case that games with more realistic worlds may generate more frustration in players when the world and the things in it don't act realistically too. Still, I have to admit it's also unclear if behavioral realism is desired at all, and whether creators should just focus more on bringing enjoyable facsimiles of real-life phenomena to their games instead. So it appears we're barreling down the road towards photorealism, and I think we're beginning to see the friction between simulation and gameplay that may take a great deal of figuring out. And I think we have a long way to go before we find out just how much value graphical immersion can bring to games. But I have to say, watching this, I was really blown away, and I do love a pretty game. Another really exciting improvement was the upgraded audio system that could be used in conjunction with Nanite. They refer to this as convolution reverb. This meant the ability to copy the reverberation characteristics of real-life spaces, so it goes without saying that the potential applications for something like this are really incredible. Maybe it's just because I finished the remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 3 back to back, but so many of these new additions in UE5 strike me as having huge potential in the horror genre in particular. And this makes me really excited considering the purported Silent Hill reboot that's in the works, and with Capcom committing to its loving modern renditions of RE. I think though really what strikes me more is that these types of survival horror games commit to a more consistent sense of navigation, so that includes how fast you move and how far you travel. Players in these games aren't zipping around their environments like in Spider-Man or using fast travel like Skyrim. These areas are real in terms of their sense of space, so being able to hear with great precision and make judgments about what direction something is in relation to you, or how far it is away from you, or how quickly it's moving, all these things mesh extremely well with games that offer realistic spaces rather than realistic environments, if there's a distinction to be made there. Something else that caught my eye were the dynamic animations, what's referred to as seamless contextual animation events, for climbing these more realistic surfaces that Nanite can offer. I'm not sure what else this really does but add an extra layer of polish for games that utilize UE5, but it may actually have the knock-on effect for those studios like Naughty Dog who have brought these high-level animation details to the fore and really pride themselves on these little details. It may cause them to up their game to the next level. This transitions well into my final thought for the day. Amongst all this admittedly incredible detail, there was a noticeable disparity between the environment design and the character design in the demo. If you notice the character's face, it was particularly stylized, and the first thing that struck me was the potential emergence of a disparity between environment and character detail. Generally speaking, we know PlayStation First Party has really become a leader in this sphere, following their investment in facial capture tech towards the end of last gen. I just wonder whether games that have extremely detailed facial animation will stand out even more now, that there could be a leveling of the field when it comes to these improved and more sort of readily available contextual animation events. I think an interesting offshoot of this point is that there have been major initiatives within Sony to share first-party studio knowledge and tech. So with the recent announcement of PlayStation Studios brand, that you have to say was put forward mainly as a marketing strategy, I wonder if there have also been further attempts to share first-party tech behind the scenes. So it's possible with all this more easily shared tech and specialization, PlayStation first parties may be inclined to continue on their current path that's tending towards these hyper-detailed, character-focused third-person games who all have a lot of work put into their character designs and animations in particular. I just wonder if this may manifest itself as a lack of variety and may come back to bite them eventually. Although we just got the news about all these reported 10 million plus sellers from Sony's first party that fit this exact mold, so I don't think there's a reason for Sony to worry right now themselves. So, that's all my thoughts for today. Next gen is coming fast. There's a lot to look forward to. People are definitely hungry and a lot of people were disappointed, but even though this wasn't a traditional game reveal, UE5 may actually be the most important reveal we could have had right now. So, hope you enjoyed this one. Have a good day.